Welcome to Talking Tactics, a show about insights and the results they ignite. I'm Safaniya Stevenson, a brand strategist and cultural analyst in the wonderful world of marketing. And every other week, I dig into the aha moments that changed everything for a higher education marketer. Each episode of Talking Tactics starts with an insight, following it from observation to action that created measurable results. We're talking about the breakthrough moments that happen with scrappy resources, and sometimes we'll even explore the tactics that, crashed and burned, because there's also value in trial and error. Your next innovative idea might be hiding in your data, your hallway conversations, or your own gut instinct. So let's get to it. Hey everyone, it's Safi back with another episode of Talking Tactics. We are going a little rogue. Do not tell and rollify, because we are looking at non-higher ed today. But before you freak out, it's still education. Insights are still going to be fire, and the tactics are still going to be actionable. So just roll with me. So let's get to my guests who are rolling with me in the studio today. Ashley Yetman, co-CEO and Director of Strategy at Baldwin and Emily Watson, Group Creative Director at Baldwin as well. Welcome to the show.
Yay, hey, thank you so
thanks
much.
for having us.
So I would love for you all to give us kind of introductions for your background and tell us a little bit about Baldwin and.
I could jump in first. I'm Ashley Yetman, strategist by trade, by background. I joined Baldwin and about 10 years ago to build the brand strategy practice. I came to Baldwin and by way of grad school in Richmond at VCU. And then I spent about 12 years in the Bay Area working at both sort of traditional advertising agencies as well as branding and design agencies, sort of well-known global brands, and then moved with my two young boys and my husband and our sheepadoodle to North Carolina. At about 2 years ago, took over ownership of Baldwin and from the founder, David Baldwin, with two other partners, which is how I have come to find myself in a newly minted role as co-CEO.
Cool. What about you, Emily?
I am Emily Watson, Group Creative Director at Baldwin and. So after undergrad, I did a portfolio school at Creative Circus where I focused on art direction. And then after that, I worked at some big agencies and some little agencies and some like really bad and really good. And about 6 years ago, landed at Baldwin and. And in that time, I've kind of migrated away from art direction a little bit and more towards copywriting. Writing has always been like a closely guarded thing for me because I love it so much. But I'm learning how to keep loving it and do it professionally simultaneously, which is not as hard as I thought it would be.
But we love opportunities for growth. So let's hop right into this. So North Carolina School Board Association comes to you all with, I would say, probably, just the smallest, tiniest ask, right, of creating a campaign to unite the entire state of North Carolina around the public good of public education. Small, easy peasy work. I know what will be going through my mind. Curious as to know what was going through yours when you get an assignment like that.
The thing that's interesting is the public good part of it wasn't even part of the initial ask and conversation. When the North Carolina School Board Association really is sort of the advocates for and protectors of public school at large. They oversee and help staff boards in every single district in the state of North Carolina. And as you can imagine, that's a tough job because every single district in the state of North Carolina is very different from one another in every permutation you can possibly think of. And obviously, the goal of each of those individual boards is to make sure that they have robust public school education available and have lots of interest and lots of students and are able to hire wonderful teachers. And so the job to be done there is really to advertise the merits of a public school education. And historically, the way that's been done is by thinking of sort of the positive features and benefits, for lack of a better term, of public education, then really kind of advocate for public school, sort of school by school and offering by offering. And as you can imagine, that can be very polarizing. What's a benefit to one county is absolutely, a terrible to another, and it causes division. And, unfortunately, what loses out in the long term is public education, and namely young children.
Yeah.
And so that was one of our sort of founding insights as we went into this work, is I think we just needed to elevate the conversation about the public good that education has in general, that public school across the board is incredibly important to all of us, whether you go there or not, and kind of get out of the weeds a little bit of the sort of individual pros and cons of public schools individually.
Yeah. And I mean, that was kind of, in the episode before this, we were talking with South Louisiana Community College, and that it was very similar to what you were saying, was like, hey, their positioning around their rebrand is like, hey, our school, if you live in South Louisiana at all, you are affected by products of who comes out of your community college. It might be your neighbor. It might be your dentist. It might be your trash pickup guy. It might be your Uber driver. All these people are affected and have kind of like this community piece. So what I really liked about what you were talking about, like this work here, is like, it doesn't matter how you individually feel about your school or your district. We're all byproducts of public education, or affected by the byproducts of public education.
That's exactly right.
And I think, too, that gives us a lot more freedom creatively when we stop thinking about it as trying to convince people to go to public school or send their children to public school, because then you're able to just talk about it without people feeling defensive or like you're being critical of their personal choices. Because the last thing that we wanted was to make people feel like we were attacking their choice to attend private school or a charter school or whatever. There are so many more choices now than there were at the founding of the Department of Education.
Yeah. And so, Emily, we're going to be talking about two tactics today. And the first one is actually focused on design. So when you're thinking about, like you said, wanting to avoid divisiveness, wanting to avoid kind of like those hot topic or hot button issues and things, talk to me about kind of what you were up against and ultimately what you all decided to do tactically with design as you were thinking of those solutions.
Ultimately, we needed something that every citizen in North Carolina could relate to on some level. And it's an incredibly diverse state, not just demographically, but also geographically and geologically. You've got the beach and you've got the mountains and you've got the Piedmont. And so being able to represent all of the different types of people and the types of schools and the types of communities with a public school budget was nearly impossible. So we first started talking about photography, and being able to show the types of people that we wanted to be able to show was impossible. Somebody was going to be left behind. We didn't want that feeling. We didn't want our clients to get phone calls that said, how come my school wasn't represented? And so we had this idea to use illustration, which is kind of liberating. It's really fun. There are a lot of different styles of illustration to choose from out there. And at first, I think the go-to is to make these like sort of cartoonish people. But then we wanted to push it even further, and we started thinking about like the animals of North Carolina and how to represent our state even more. So like there's a giraffe, and no, we don't have giraffes here, but the North Carolina Zoo.
There's not wild giraffes walking around.
The zoo, the North Carolina Zoo, is one of the greatest zoos in the country. And so we're like, that's fun. And then, river otters, and even like the cryptid, the Bigfoot is like, there's like a Bigfoot museum that we thought was really interesting. And so just being able to represent the state and the people of the state without showing those people was sort of like our loophole, get out of jail free card through illustration. And we also, because unfortunately public school is sort of like a weirdly controversial issue, we didn't want to seem like aggressive visually. We wanted to be disarming and open and welcoming the same way that our schools are. And so using the style that we landed on, which was sort of simple and kind of nostalgic, really opened that up to allow people to be open to what we were saying instead of being put off by not seeing themselves or feeling attacked. And so we wanted to really bring people in. And then for color and typography, simultaneously, we had some bold statements to make. And so we really wanted to be bold in the design choices for typography and color so that all of those things, added up to a message that was easy to receive, but wasn't necessarily indecisive. Like we still wanted to be really firm in the stance that we were taking.
Yeah. And I think one of the pieces, and I know Ashley, we talked about this too, is, and if you even look at kind of like the case, and we'll be sure to add examples of this work, guys, because it is so just energizing and so cute. It gives like nostalgia, like Nick Jr., like an elevated, like
100%.
modern Nick Jr. And it's so, and like you said, it does connect to something inside of you. Like when you see it, like, oh, but it also doesn't feel like baby, like too pre-K or too kindergarten. It feels very relatable, just fun. But I know like one of the things too, like with Baldwin and some of the things that you all do kind of in the creative space, across some of the case studies I've seen from you all, a lot of what you hang your hat on is like this premise of big ideas beget, or bold ideas beget bold design. And when we're talking about education, higher education, sometimes bold is not safe. Like bold is a very scary move, like for this industry. And I know we talked about too, Ashley, like how do you navigate both strategic and creative and feedback to avoid what you call like milk toast, where you have this bold, beautiful, moving idea for a hearts and minds campaign like this, but knowing you're in an industry that is like bold adverse, like they're very, risk adverse when it comes to making those decisions. How do you avoid that milk toast kind of as you go through process to make sure that this still has like the emotional side that connects with audiences?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a two-part answer. The first of which is strategically, you're absolutely right. We're looking for the strong POV, but really all that is like when we start working with whether it's an individual person all the way to like a Fortune 5,000 global company, there is some truth at the heart and soul of that organization of like why they exist in the first place. And it is true to them and to only them. And other humans are really attracted to that. Like
Yeah.
when you know who you are and what your purpose is and you stand firmly in it and then you like behave accordingly, people find that very attractive. People are off put by that too, but isn't it so much better to be actively chosen for knowing who you are and a stance in the world than be mildly acceptable to everyone and then really like emotionally resonant for no one. And so we really work very hard in the early days of our strategy process with anyone that we work with to figure out, like, what is that truth? Like, what is your sort of strongly held belief that led you to, or the founders to start this organization in the first place? And it's 99.9% of the time bigger than a product or a service. Like there's a reason and there's a truth there. And I think that was what was really smart strategically about this particular campaign is because it's based on a human truth. It's based on we are all benefiting collectively as a society, as Americans, by having a foundational support system and access to education. It benefits us all. And so I think we start by looking there. We deeply integrate our strategy and design process because humans learn things and they take in stories in ways that are both showing and telling. And sometimes the marketing world, I don't know what it is, but we walk into boardrooms and it's like the human side of people gets shut down. And the innate instinct is like, okay, we need to rationalize the 57 reasons why we're a better choice than somebody else, when sometimes the best way to have people understand what your organization is about is for them to see it, to hear it, to feel it. And I think that's exactly what you're hitting on with this design system for this particular campaign. Is it actually, like, viscerally, when you see it and hear it, we have like a jingle that's part of it that is absolutely adorable, but it's all actually a very like deep and meaningful social message, but it's served up in a way that feels like elementary education in the like the best parts of being a kid and imagination. And so it unlocks your ability to hear a message through like multi-sensory way of being. And it's the difference between like design for design's sake, which oftentimes can be like what you're saying, like milk toast, where it lands. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's also nothing right with it either. And so it's really trying to find that intersection.
Let's take a quick pause for a word from our sponsor. Southeast Missouri State University needed to launch more targeted campaigns faster, yet they were bogged down by manual campaign builds, slow approvals, and vendor overload. With Element 451, they eliminated 5 vendor tools and gained marketing superpowers in one platform. They saw a 13% increase in applications, processed applications within 2 days, and achieved 33 to 35% email open rates. The impact? Personalized, automated campaigns running at scale, without the drag. Ready to turn your next campaign around in hours, not weeks? Try an agent today at element451.com/agents. Cool. And I think, from your perspective, when you all put something, because when I think of Hearts and Minds campaign that I've seen in the past or potentially that like I've worked on, what was that initial reaction when, you show design and they're like, where are the pictures of the people? Where are the thing? Like, what was that conversation like? And was there any kind of like push and pull? And how did you use that strategic framing to say, hey, we think this is not only a bold design, but also a smart one to make sure we don't get into any of that hot water that we talked about?
I think it comes down to the same way that we ask our clients to believe in their brand. We believe in our brand. And we did a lot of research and a lot of homework, and we really believed strongly in what we were doing. And so I think when you're standing for something, it becomes a lot easier for other people to come on board with you because it's just sort of, there's this sort of like magnetism that comes along with it, the same way that Ashley's talking about brands. And so really that was driving everything. I'm not going to lie. It's still mildly terrifying to go into a room full of people who are expecting something and you know that they are zero part of them is expecting what you're about to show them. And, yeah. And so
because when Ashley pulled it up for me, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
This is not at all what I was expecting for a Hearts and Minds campaign for a statewide education campaign. It blew my mind. Like you said, there was no way that I would have ever guessed what Ashley was going to show me, and what we'll show you at home. Just have to go to the website, at enrollify.org, Talking Tactics, and how, like you said, just how radically different. And like you said, that probably just that initial nervousness of, oh my gosh, no one's going to expect this. So we got to have our ducks in a row.
Right. It's like, yeah, this is good. And then you're about to show it to something, you're like, oh no, this could really go either way. But it was really well received. And I think it's because, they could feel how deeply we believed in them and in what we were showing. And so that allowed them the freedom to also love what we were doing. I think a lot of these decisions and a lot of why people are risk averse, it's just fear. And when somebody shows you that it's okay to like something that is wildly different from what you're expecting, it's liberating. You can be like, oh, I do like that thing, or I don't like that thing. And you have a reason and we can talk about it. Education always benefits from debate. And the way that education is represented is not immune to that either. And so let's have a debate about it. And I'll tell you why I'm right.
Oh, she will too. Watch out.
I love that. And the confidence, because like you said, if you all didn't also go in with what you touched on what you touched on earlier, Ashley, about there is something magnetic and gravitational around people who are confident in their point of view and what they have to say and the thoughtfulness, and that we're not trying to be every other school district. We're not trying to be every other state. We're not trying to adopt every single piece of educational marketing and design. We want to do something that feels true to us. So that makes a lot of sense to me. So switching gears here, we're going to talk about our last tactic and a what could be, some may say, a divisive tactic, like in how you go about executing it, and that's creators and influencers. So this is a fairly new tactic, or I would say slow to adopt tactic across like higher education and education in general. Why tap into creators for this particular campaign?
I think it's the price of entry in a lot of ways for, effective marketing. Creator culture, influencers, like that is not going anywhere, and that is part of how you communicate on behalf of a brand. I mean, it's the ultimate sort of media channel, and so there's some like business reasons to make those choices. There's in far more followers that an individual person is going to have than a brand. I mean, by and large, there are many brands who've been very successful in their own right and getting followers in social media. But I mean, the more and more we learn about how even like algorithms work and things like that,
Mhm.
I mean, humans want to hear from humans. It is not rocket science, but that element, that like literal human element,
Yeah.
is an important piece, I think, of any responsible 21st century marketing campaign. We were strategic even about how we did that, not only in our selection of who we sought out to be influencers on our behalf of this campaign, um, but like really thinking through as best we could what was a mix of folks that would be representative enough. We
Mhm.
have a Eastern North Carolina teacher and a Western North Carolina teacher. They represent a mix of races. They had already talked about the merits of public education writ large in their content. They were very positive in there. I mean, we're talking about, primary school teachers.
Yeah.
So, it's not a real divisive group to begin with. So it's a pretty safe bet. We covered off on those bases as best we could, but we knew that there was going to be an element of quote unquote risk to that. And
Yeah.
given that they were not the center and focal point of the campaign, we felt like we would have some permission to engage with some influencers when the vast majority of the communications came from this place, this sort of more design solution, illustrative place that the sort of broader campaign came from.
And that's really interesting to think about. I didn't even consider that till you said it, was like sometimes that riskiness of the individual tactic can't take over like the overall body of work for the campaign, where sometimes we'll be so focused on like, oh my gosh, the influencer and the creator marketing, and this is a risky move and blah blah blah, but it's just one tactic in a sea of tactics across a campaign. So it's like, we'll take a little risk in this area, maybe play a little safe on some other areas to kind of balance it out. So that's also helpful, because I think, again, we're talking about risk taking here, design, tactics, channels, and just thinking, hey, overall, is it okay to take a little risk here with trying influencer marketing or creator marketing, and that it's one blip in the scale, like in general.
Yeah. I think too, when you come at campaign development from a place of some sort of inherent risk already baked in because you are going to show up in the marketplace with a point of view.
Yeah.
I mean, a point of view is inherently polarizing, not in a bad way, but that does mean there's going to be dissenters. And I think the metric of success should not be about, well, did nobody say anything bad? I actually think it should be more like, of the people who said something good, how effusive was that? Because I think you can count on always, folks giving negative feedback, and especially online, especially in the influencer creator space. I mean, trolls abound. And so you just have to go into it knowing that that's going to happen, but what is the quality of the exchange that's happening among the people who are there honestly and truly to be a part of something? Even our design solution, while it took the humanity away from it so people could maybe digest it more easily, it wasn't without point of view in of itself. So I don't think any of it was safe. And I think the minute you're starting from a place where it's like, we're going to go ask 1,000 people what feels good to them, it's a waste of money, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So as we're thinking about, I mean, this campaign is still out in the wild today, but what are some of the results that you all have gotten back from how the campaign has done thus far?
Two really awesome things happened even as we were going through the process of setting up this campaign. The first of which is we went and we presented this campaign to the boards of North Carolina. So these are folks who are representative of each of the boards that the North Carolina School Board Association brings together. So essentially, there was a delegate from every single district.
Mhm.
And by and large, we got folks from a multitude of diverse backgrounds, like by and large, being like, this is absolutely the right way to move forward. So, in my opinion, that was sort of the best focus group
Yeah.
of all, is that you could get a room like that to feel the power of having a collective and invitational message to work together. So
Right.
that was thing number one that I thought was really amazing. Thing number two was that we were able to make this campaign have bigger legs than you would have if you were just footing the bill from like a corporate price tags standpoint. I think a large number of the billboards that we had were donated by media companies.
Love that.
Influencers worked with us. That's also another indicator in my mind of success.
Yeah.
It's a little bit intangible, but people being willing to get on board and help us get this message out in the world
Mhm.
for significantly reduced or free rates is a big sort of sign of success. And then there's also been some like standard metrics, like far
Yeah.
more engagement from their social channels than they've had before. Actually, less divisive commentary. That doesn't mean there was no negative commentary. There always
Yeah.
is, like I said. What else, Emily? What am I missing?
The campaign was picked up by a couple dozen publications around the state, which was indicative of the public interest side of it, and that uh, people are hungry for somebody to represent them and to have a point of view that benefits them and acknowledges that. And so I think that was really nice as well from a PR perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think we reached something like 33, 34 million people
Wow.
eyeballs across the state, either from a actual like out of home, just folks driving around standpoint, and then as well as through organic and paid social. So we were able to really broaden their awareness and engagement as part of the campaign. I also think we heard a lot of really great feedback from teachers and from, I think they really felt supported, which is obviously one of the number one objectives.
Yeah, to feel seen as an educator right now and to, go outside and, drive past a billboard that is championing like the work that you love doing and that brings value to like society and the world. I can only imagine what that felt like for the teachers to know, hey, there's a campaign out there like running on my behalf so people understand, what we're trying to accomplish here. So I can only imagine how those teachers felt seeing those cute little billboards. Well, thank you all so much for your time. Like I really appreciate walking through um this campaign and also really helping us refocus on the fact that if we want to connect to hearts and minds, if we want to do campaigns like this to actually help move the needle, that like what you said, bold ideas beget bold design. And if we want to take those big bold steps forward, we do have to focus and be risky and take risk with design and risk with tactics. So loved hearing from you all today.
Thank you so much. It's been so much fun to chat with you.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
And as always, everyone out there, be bold in your ideas, be bold in your designs, be bold in your tactics, and keep walking the walk and talking the tactics. Thanks for listening to Talking Tactics. If you want to try out the tactics you heard on today's show, you get a full 10 from me, and I would love to hear about how you made them your own. You can find me by searching Safaniya, Safaniya on LinkedIn. You know, there's not many Safaniyas on there, so you'll be able to see me. And if you're enjoying Talking Tactics, please rate and review the show. The overachiever in me needs your feedback, and I'll certainly use it for confirmation or, optimization, depending on the review. And finally, if you just can't get enough great podcasts, the Enrollify Podcast Network delivers with an amazing selection of other marketing and admissions-based podcasts just for you. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com. See you next time.